Yeah, I wanted to sort of ask some questions on the impact of your establishments on the high street. We sort of hear about the death of the high street often. And I noticed yesterday in Acton, that where we've already got Ladbrokes, Betfred, Paddy Power, Casino, there's a new casino type thing opening up. And a lady sort of stopped me in the street and said, "Can't you get rid of this? We don't want more things like this." They were disappearing at one stage, now they're coming back. We know that in the white paper it does observe that clustering is a problem of gambling premises, and as I said, they come in all shapes and forms. So yeah, they identify that as a problem in areas, and people that have replied to the consultation have said that there need to be changes in licensing powers so that locals get a say. So would you agree with that?
Well, if you look at the numbers in terms of licensed betting officers or betting shops, they support 42,000 jobs. There's been a reduction of 10,000 jobs since 2019 for reasons I'll come into, and that is because the number of betting shops on our high streets as of March 22 was 6,219.
Not just betting shops, also the slot machine, fruit machine shops, do you know what I mean?
That's a really fair point. I'll cover betting shops and then Miles can come in on adult gaming centres. So there were 6,219 betting shops as of March 22. Over 2,000 shops have actually closed since 2019 in the last 4 years. So there's been quite a dramatic reduction in terms of the number of betting shops on the high street, a reduction of 25%. Sadly, that's reduced jobs by 10,000 as well. Independent betting shops as well. The 537 shops, over 200 have closed in the last 5 years. So what you're seeing is really big closures in the last few years.
And there used to be fluctuations if they were going, and now they're coming back. Literally, there's a new one on our high street.
There may well be new shops opening. But from the adult gaming centre perspective, the numbers are roughly stable at about 1,000 nationally. And what happens is some shops will close down because they're in slightly less optimal sites if an opportunity arises to, say, move on to the high street in a better shop. It's just like any other retail business. So whilst there may be some perceptions about an increase in numbers, the facts actually don't stack that up. And in terms of the AGC, just again, roughly speaking, on average, each AGC will be bringing about £500,000 to the local economy, to that high street, and 12 jobs. So they are just like any other shop sitting on the high street, providing a diversity of offer, some entertainment for those that wish to participate in it.
I mean, the actual question was, do you support the idea of locals having a meaningful say?
They do. They do have a meaningful say already. I think the challenge at local authority levels around any kind of planning or licensing issue, and it's not just here, is about balancing the interests.
It's only if you're following what's happening in a planning committee, if you're looking at in our borough, they nail it to a tree. So if you've got the wherewithal to notice what's going on, or you look on the website and see what's coming up, I mean, if there was a proper meaningful say where people were consulted, because I don't know how you would respond to that, but locals, you know, this woman was saying, get rid of it, we don't want it. And although you're saying it provides 12 jobs, if it's 400 suicides a year, the cost to the NHS or whatever, do you know what I mean? There can be disbenefits as well. Yeah, there's 12 human bodies maybe, but...
That's a much broader point, Rupa, I think. I mean, the 400 figure is one of some considerable dispute, I have to say. But we are looking at...
You know, that's a cost of living crisis.
We're looking at... well, again, I come back to the point that you raised about the say of local people. It is exactly the same for a high street betting office, for a bingo hall, for an AGC, as it is for any other shop on the high street. The process of planning and licensing is exactly the same. If the powers that local authorities have to grant planning and grant licensing are not enough, they're not enough generally for other businesses as well. I would argue that they do have sufficient powers, they just don't exercise them well enough.
You wouldn't want any tightening up, because the analogy was made in the last session with alcohol. So, I mean, in the same way that licensed premises, there's a different threshold to a normal opening a newsagent shop or whatever. Would you want to see a tightening up and more of a say for local people?
But there is. There are licensing arrangements. So you're planning arrangements and then licensing arrangements, exactly the same as a pub.
I mean, there are indexes that look at, I think it's chicken shops and gambling premises, and your health or whatever otherwise of your high street can be measured with those. I think you have more gambling premises where there's a higher incidence of unemployment when they've done the 650 constituencies and crunched that. It seems to be not a coincidence. And in a cost of living crisis, if people are gambling away what money they have, then although it's 12 jobs, there's a lot of disadvantages as well.
Undoubtedly, when you do the cost and benefit analysis, you will come up with a figure for cost and benefit analysis. But what I'm hearing from you, Rupa, if I may, is a kind of anti-gambling argument that says these places shouldn't exist at all. On the basis that society has determined that the activity is legal and cooperate, what we have to make sure we have in place is appropriate regulation control at the appropriate level to provide that facility in a way that society finds acceptable. And I think we've got it about right in terms of planning and licensing personally.
Gambling White Paper proposes a requirement for a cumulative impact assessment for each of these establishments, bringing together local gambling licensing law in line with alcohol licensing. Would you welcome such changes? And what impact do you think they'll have on the high street?
From our perspective, I mean, it's been proposed it's going to be introduced, so it's going to be introduced. I think it's important to make sure that it is implemented in the correct way and not used as some kind of stick or sort of anti-gambling stick, if you like, because I think that will just end up very often in the same way that current refusals of premises license do will end up in the courts. There's nothing wrong in principle with a cumulative impact assessment, as long as the continuation of the aim to permit rule applies as it does, which is a statutory aim to permit, then I think it can quite satisfactorily sit within the range of powers that local authorities currently have to regulate high streets.
Okay, I said I accepted a trip to the Hippodrome. I'm constantly, since 2015, been asked by Casino to go and see. I think out of curiosity I will take them up on it.
I would recommend it.
I've balked at the idea.
I would recommend it. I think you'll be very pleasantly surprised at what you find.
Okay. All right, thanks.